Carr throwing a pick kind of in the first quarter, did you see that as setting the tone for the game?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was the first drive of the game for the Raiders, and it led to the Chiefs' first touchdown. So it was everything that the Raiders had talked about not doing here in Kansas City. It was everything that, all the ghosts that have been chasing Derek Carr around, the cold weather Arrowhead ghosts that we've all been talking about and writing about this week. On the very first drive for it to happen, it just did. It set the tone, and it was all downhill from that point on. I mean, there was a penalty that the Raiders committed on a third down play that would have forced a field goal attempt on the ensuing drive, and lo and behold, they jump off sides, which they're prone to do, frustratingly so. Led to a first down, and a couple plays later, maybe it was a play later, they score a touchdown. So penalties, turnovers, in that one drive, it pretty much just set the tone for everything.
And Miles, if you can just break down what this really means for the Raiders' playoff hopes, like Vinny just said, I mean, they haven't been able to win here. Now that's 2 down to the Chiefs in this season. What does this do for their chances were already kind of slim, and now it's like they've evaporated.
Yeah. Well, as Pete from Mad Men once said, it's not great, Bob. Yeah. This was a time or a day that they needed to, I think, just be able to get in here, at least show that they were competitive, because look, they weren't competitive against the Jets. The Jets just lost to the winless Bengals. So I don't know what that means in the theory of transitivity in the NFL, because at least the Raiders beat the Bengals a few weeks ago, but they really didn't look very good doing it. So I think that over the course of the last 3 games, we've seen the Raiders maybe kind of run out of steam a little bit here. And now that they're 6-6, now that you've got other teams in the league that are still winning games. I mean, the Titans right now are in as good a position as anybody for a wild card. You've got the Steelers, despite playing a guy they call Duck, actually still in good position to make the playoffs now. I believe they're 7-5. And the Bills, they keep doing things really, really well. I think they're one of the more underrated teams in the league this year. They keep going out and proving what they can do, especially seeing what they did against the Cowboys. It's going to be very, very hard now for the Raiders to make the playoffs at this point.
Miles, what does the calendar tell you? What's today's date?
Today is December 1st.
What happens in December in the NFL?
Bleep gets real.
Exactly. And teams identify themselves for the good or the bad, in a lot, especially when you're a presumed contender. When you get to December, you're either going to be a contender or you're not going to be a contender. And I think that what we're finding about the Raiders is a little bit of overachievement early in the season. But I think the last 2 weeks has exposed them a little bit. Now, granted, there's still 4 games left to play. They're 1 game behind the Steelers and the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans come to town next week in Oakland, so they have a chance. I mean, they if they can win out, if they can figure out a way to win a couple more games and hope for some help along the way, they can still make the playoffs. But today was definitely a damaging blow.
They did win all 3 that they did have in that homestand. That obviously 0-2 in the last stretch here on these 2 road games. But I mean, when you have Derek Carr not getting a pass out to his wide receivers until what was it, the 4th quarter that we saw a wide receiver actually haul in a pass?
He had one completion to a wide receiver through the first 3 quarters of the game. That was Zay Jones. It was 1 pass for 8 yards. So yeah, I mean, they obviously need to get way more out of that position.
Right, and then the interceptions. Those just didn't help at all. You had 2 picks, and the one that we discussed in the first quarter, and then I believe the other one was in the second quarter that goes for pick 6. So once that's kind of been established, that's already kind of having these guys on low morale. And then you see Carlson missing field goals, having extra points blocked and then return for 2-point defensive scores. So, I mean, that was obviously gutting, but that was already at the end of the game. So we've seen some struggles here with Carlson. Vinny, what do you make of those struggles that the kickers had? And do you think that Gruden starts shaking things up here?
Well, not this year, but I think that Daniel Carlson is one of many issues that they have going into the offseason. And I think Miles touched on it just a little while ago as far as they need to get more from their wide receivers. I don't know if it's going to be this collection of wide receivers. Miles and I both covered a team a few years ago in 2016 that had a similar issue. And I tweeted it out today. sometimes it looks like you're a million miles away. Well, it looked like the Rams in 2016 were a million miles away. In reality, they were a few players away and a really good coach away. I think the Raiders have the coach. I think they have a capable enough quarterback. I think their offensive line has come along. Josh Jacobs showed today again why he's arguably the best offensive rookie in the NFL. He's definitely a foundational piece moving forward. I think there's some parts defensively that are working out. Obviously, Max Crosby is playing really well. The defensive line is playing okay. There's some issues that they have to fix there on defense, but when you're talking about the kicker, it's one of many. I think they need explosiveness at wide receiver. I think they're going to have to probably do that in the draft or free agency. Give me one or two more playmakers for Derek Carr, and let's see what Derek Carr is all about with being well protected and guys that can stretch the field. By the way, let's also remember and always remember that the vision coming into this year was for Antonio Brown.
He was not my name.
That you have to. You have to.
It's like you just said Lord Voldemort, baby.
Exactly. But you have to, because that was the vision. And obviously they knew last offseason that they needed to upgrade that position. And they went out and got arguably the best guy at his position. We just didn't know that he wasn't going to come correct mentally and everything else, and walked and talked his way out of Oakland and then New England as well. So those are things that you can't account for. I mean, you had a vision. The Raiders had a plan, and who knows what would have happened had he been out here, but he isn't. So they're going to have to now couch that until next offseason. But it's imperative that they do, because as we've seen these last 2 weeks, today in particular, they're not being able to throw to the wide receivers. They're not getting separation. They're not getting past people. They're not giving Derek Carr a chance to make big plays down the field. And so that's an issue.